Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this talk. I work here in Homerton and I am anesthetizing patients for bariatric surgery since 2007. So, this is about enhanced recovery, which is patient centered, evidence based, and multidisciplinary team involvement aimed towards reduce patient surgical stress response, optimize their physiological function, and facilitate recovery. In United Kingdom, we have got Society of Bariatric Anesthetists guidelines for preoperative assessment, intraoperative anesthetic management, and postoperative pain management for obese patients undergoing bariatric surgical procedures. You see, as Ongsu has already mentioned, about this has got stop bank questionnaire for assessment of the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. This slide also shows the position of the patient on the operation table to make the optimum position for intubation. It has also got guidelines about the dose requirement depending on the BMI, the body weight, and a rough idea about post-operative pain management. For any enhanced recovery program to be successful, I believe the key thing is the communication between the surgeon, the anesthetist, the physicians, and other members of the team. And the best way to do it is the multidisciplinary team meeting. This data is from National Confidential Inquiry into Perioperative Deaths 2012. At that time, 105 hospitals in United Kingdom were performing bariatric surgical procedures, out of which only 57 had multidisciplinary team meetings. And out of those 57, only 32 had presence of a consultant anesthetist. We at Homerton, we have got a multidisciplinary team meetings since I have started 2007, and we have got my consultant colleague who is regular attending that meeting. Now, what is the purpose of that multidisciplinary team meeting? From our anesthetic point of view, is to identify the high risk patients. Generally, high risk patients from anesthetic point of view are patients who are immobile, comes on a wheelchair, patients who are on a complicated drug regime, including warfarin, patients who are on cardiac failure. We often get patients who are in renal failure, chronic renal failure, on dialysis. We come across patients with chronic obstructive airway disease who are on oxygen dependent. As Ongsu has now mentioned, there are a significant number of patients undergoing bariatric surgical procedures who suffer from obstructive sleep apnea, who are on dependent on CPAP or non-invasive ventilation, patients who are having a revisional surgery, or patients who had anesthetic complications before are definitely the patients who are high risk. So now what to do? We have to optimize these patients. We will try our best to optimize these patients for the surgical procedures. Patients are advised to quit smoking. Patients who are on CPAP are advised to take CPAP regularly. Diet, 800 calorie diet advised by our dietitians. Patients who are on multiple drugs, many, as we all know, significant number of them are hypertensive, have cardiac problems. They are advised to take their drugs regularly. Exercise is a very important thing, motivation, and of course, education, educating the patient to let them know that the best outcome they can get after this type of procedures is reduction of body weight and exercise before the operation. This is Ben Stokes, who is a symbol of motivation. Once patients is optimized, the patients are ready for theatre. There is a common perception among us that airway management or intubation is difficult in patients undergoing bariatric surgical procedures. This was published in Anesthesia 2008 and it's out of 198 patients note they had a look, only 2 had difficulty in intubation. Now, our experience in Homerton. We had a look at whether we had any problems with intubating in 240 patients with a BMI greater than 30 in the period between January 2015 to March 2016. Majority of them, as you can see, were intubated by video laryngoscope, glide scope. Only 3 we needed a second attempt to intubate the patient. So, the key message from this is, if the patients are positioned in a proper optimum position for intubation and video laryngoscopy is used, the incidence of difficult intubation is not that high in patients undergoing bariatric surgical procedures. In the preoperative visit by the anesthetist, if I am to sum up my entire talk in 3 words, these are the 3 key words. So patients in my preoperative visit, they are encouraged and shown and demonstrated about the importance of post-op breathing exercises, thereby reducing the post-op respiratory complications. Patients are explained about the post-op pain relief they will be having. Usually it is a combination of local anesthetic injection by the surgeons in the ports. We try to reduce the use of opioid morphine group of analgesics, and we give a combination of paracetamol and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, Voltarol, unless there is any contraindication to it. And patients are also encouraged to be mobile after the operation to reduce the thromboembolic complications after the operation. Next one, intraoperative. The standard monitoring is used. One of my colleagues, who is fond of total intravenous anesthesia, also used the anesthetic depth monitors, which I don't have much experience about. The common opioid used during the operation in my practice is remifentanil because of its shorter duration of action. Desflurane is the preferred inhalational anesthetic agent because of its low blood gas solubility and it wears off from the system quickly. After the advent of Sugammadex, increasingly more and more rocuronium is being used as the preferred muscle relaxant. And as I have mentioned, I give paracetamol, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like diclofenac, morphine in a very titrated dose, antiemetics 2 if not 3. The patient's position is in a head-up position, and as I have mentioned earlier, video laryngoscope, which is glide scope in Homerton, is being used for intubating these patients. This is a regime of the opioid sparing or opioid-free anesthesia suggested in European Society of Perioperative Care of Obese Patients meeting in 2015. In Europe, dexmedetomidine, ketamine, lidocaine, magnesium, these are the 4 drugs quite very often used in Bruges, one of the renowned center for bariatric surgery in Europe. I don't have much experience with that, but I must say I give paracetamol 2 grams during the operation as per our SOBA guidelines, and diclofenac 75 milligram unless there is any contraindication to it. This video. Can you move to your bed, please? So how I can themselves.
Catherine, just need you to pop over this side of the desk.
First move your leg.
That's it. Well done. That's it.
Okay. Okay.
Excellent. Well done.
Okay, well done. Move your head, please. Come to the middle of the bed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Well done.
Post-operative, as I have already mentioned, the patients are put in a sit-up position, encouraged to have breathing exercises and multimodal analgesia with titrated dose of opioids, paracetamol, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. This is another video. For us, please. Can you bend your knees? Move to her bed. Courage to take nice deep breath. Wiggle your toes, please, for us. And a nice deep breath. Hold your breath, please. Yes. So now coming to enhanced recovery after bariatric surgery. But this was done in Imperial College London, and it was published in Obesity Surgery in 2014. And they had a look at 226 patients. Yes, and they also come to the conclusion that it is feasible and it is safe without increasing any significant length of stay in the hospital. And this was their protocol. Now, what did we do here? This was presented in IPSO Vienna in 2015, and we had a look at patients operated here between November 2011 to November 2003. All these patients were operated by one surgeon. Out of 224 patients, we had a look. The BMI ranged between 35.2 to 84.2, and majority had gastric bypass followed by sleeve gastrectomy. Post-operative stay ranged from up to 37 days, and only 14% of the patient was discharged on the post-operative day 1, 62% were by day 2, and 87% discharged by day 3. Now, what are the causes of failed discharge or delayed discharge? That was related to pain management, raised CRP, and other reasons. And then we thought how to improve this. From our point of view, from the anesthetic point of view, apart from other reasons, we thought we will use more shorter acting opioids, and obviously they encourage the patients to be mobile as early as possible, optimize the post-op pain and post-op nausea and vomiting. Then it was presented again in IPSO Dubai last year. So these patients all had preoperative liver shrinkage diet, all had gone through multidisciplinary team meeting, and many of them, apart from multidisciplinary team meeting, they were again assessed by a consultant anesthetist. Dietitian obviously spoke to them, and encouragement of surgical exercises, breathing exercises I have already mentioned to you. These patients were all done by the same surgeon between January 2014 and December 2015. 129 cases we had a look. Majority of them this time had sleeve gastrectomy. One patient was discharged on the day of operation, but that was like a removal of a gastric band. So 67% was discharged on day 1. There were various causes of delays which we could not discharge on the post-operative day 1. And now this is a comparison. So initial audit, we had 14% of patients discharged by day 1, whereas the next one we had a look, 68% were discharged on day 1. And initial audit, 87% was discharged by day 3. And in this one, after implementation of some guidelines, we could manage out of 29, 127 patients by day 3. This is our team in Arnhem, Holland, one of the well-known centers in Europe for bariatric surgical procedure. And I must admit that my anesthetic management of bariatric patients, I have learned a lot by visiting their place. And this is our department, the first department to be reaccredited by the Royal College of Anesthetists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shantanu. We'll just limit to a couple of questions because of conscious of time. Any questions for Dr. Shantanu?
Just a very quick question.
Yes.
Frequency of post-op analgesia. You give them NSAIDs?
Post-op analgesia, I give regular paracetamol, IV paracetamol, and they get PRN morphine. And I specifically tell the nurses that try to restrict the use of morphine, oral morphine, and that is on PRN basis only, 20 milligram, 4 hourly PRN. During the operation, they get one dose of diclofenac sodium, and recovery if needed, I give a titrated dose of morphine. And Mr. Agarwal and myself, when we work together, we also give PR Valterol if needed in the post-operative period.
They go home on NSAIDs.
Not routine. Not routine.
Okay. Thank you, Shantanu. Thank you very much indeed.